Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift.
Chapter 1. The Arrival in Lilliput. I am Lemuel Gulliver, a physician from England. I was born in Nottinghamshire and was the third of 5 sons. My family was poor, so I had to leave Cambridge and become a surgeon's apprentice in London. I learned navigation and mathematics from a man named James Bates. After my apprenticeship, I studied physics in Leyden and became a surgeon on a ship called the Swallow for 3 years. I settled in London, married a woman named Mary Burton, and started a medical practice. But my business failed after my patron died. So, I decided to go back to sea and traveled for 6 years. I was offered a job on a ship called the Antelope and sailed to the East Indies. During a violent storm, 12 crew members died and the rest of us boarded a rowboat. The boat capsized, and I lost track of my companions. I swam to shore, exhausted, and fell asleep. When I woke up, I found myself tied to the ground with my arms, legs, and hair. I saw little people with bows and arrows who had tied me up. I struggled to get free and finally managed to break the strings. The little people fired arrows at me, but I decided to remain still. They brought me food and wine, and eventually, an official climbed onto my body and told me that I was to be taken to the capital city. I was placed in a frame of wood and carried by 900 men to the city. I was padlocked to a temple, and I was only allowed to walk around the building and lie down inside. This was the beginning of my strange and incredible journey. Chapter 2. Gulliver's Exploration of Lilliput. Once I was finally able to stand up after being tied to the building by the Lilliputians, I was able to see the beautiful countryside. Everything looked tiny to me. Even the tallest trees were only 7 feet tall. I needed to go to the bathroom, and I made sure to do it outside because I wanted to show everyone how clean I was. The Lilliputian servants even came to clean up after me. One day, the emperor came to visit me on horseback from his tower. He had servants bring me food and drink, and we tried to talk to each other even though we couldn't understand each other. After a while, he left soldiers to guard me, but some of them tried to shoot arrows at me. To teach them a lesson, I took 6 of them and pretended to eat one, but I really let them go. The emperor and his court were pleased with my kindness. A bed was made for me, using 600 small beds sewn together, and people from the villages came to see me. The government discussed what to do with me and considered options like starving me or shooting me, but they decided to be kind to me instead. They brought me food every morning, gave me servants, clothes, and even teachers to help me learn their language. Every day, I asked the emperor to set me free, but he refused. He made sure I didn't have any weapons by searching me, and all my weapons were taken away. Chapter 3. Discovering the Miniature World. I was hoping to be set free, as I was getting along well with the Lilliputians and earning their trust. The emperor decided to entertain me with shows, including a performance by rope dancers. They were Lilliputians who wanted jobs in the government and to get the job. They danced on thin ropes suspended in the air. If a job became available, the candidates would dance for the emperor, and whoever jumped the highest would get the job. Even the people who already had the job had to keep dancing to show they still could. The emperor also showed me a game where he put 3 thin ribbons on a table and asked people to jump over a stick or crawl under it. The one who was the most skilled won one of the ribbons. I even made my own game for the emperor and his people. I used sticks and my handkerchief to make a platform for horsemen to ride on. The emperor loved it, but one horse stepped through my handkerchief, and it was too dangerous for them to keep riding on it, so I stopped the game. One day, some Lilliputians found my hat that had washed ashore, and I asked them to bring it back to me. The emperor also asked me to stand like a giant statue so his troops could march under me. Finally, my petitions for freedom were answered. I had to promise to obey some rules, like helping the Lilliputians in times of war, surveying the land, helping with building and delivering important messages. I agreed, and my chains were removed. Chapter 4. Customs and Traditions of the Miniature People. I arrived at Mildendo, the capital city of the Lilliputians, and was amazed by its beauty. The city was surrounded by a wall and had a capacity of 500,000 residents. The residents were all told to stay indoors, but they sat on their roofs and in their garret windows to see me. The emperor wanted me to see the magnificence of his palace, which was located at the center of the city. To make it easier for me to see the palace, I cut down some trees to make a stool for myself. I carried the stool with me so that I could sit down and see things from a shorter distance than I could when I was standing. Some 2 weeks after I obtained my freedom, I was visited by a government official named Reldrisal. He informed me that two forces, a rebel group and a foreign empire, threatened the kingdom of Lilliput. The kingdom was divided into two factions, Tramexan and Slamexan, and the people in these factions were distinguished by the height of their heels. Reldrisal told me that the emperor had chosen to employ mostly the low-heeled Slamexan in his administration. He also explained that the emperor had lower heels than all of his officials, but his heir had one heel higher than the other, which made him walk unevenly. At the same time, the Lilliputians feared an invasion from the island of Blefuscu, which Reldrisal referred to as the other great empire of the universe. The philosophers of Lilliput did not believe my claim that there were other countries in the world inhabited by people my size, and instead thought that I had dropped from the moon or a star. Reldrisal then described the history of the two nations. The conflict between them, he said, began years ago when the emperor's grandfather, who was then in command of the country, commanded all Lilliputians to break their eggs on the small end first. This decision was made after the emperor broke an egg the old way, large end first, and cut his finger. The people resented the law, and 6 rebellions were started in protest. The monarchs of Blefuscu fueled these rebellions, and when they were over, the rebels fled to Blefuscu to seek refuge. 11,000 people chose death rather than submit to the law. Books written by the big Indians were banned in Lilliput. The government of Blefuscu accused the Lilliputians of disobeying their religious doctrine, the Brundrakral, by breaking their eggs at the small end. The Lilliputians argued that the doctrine read that all true believers shall break their eggs at the convenient end, which could be interpreted as the small end. Reldrisal continued by telling me that the exiles gained support in Blefuscu to launch a war against Lilliput and were aided by rebel forces inside Lilliput. The war between the two nations had been raging ever since. I was asked to help defend Lilliput against its enemies, but I did not feel that it was appropriate for me to intervene. Nevertheless, I offered my services to the emperor. Chapter 5. The Great War with Blefuscu. After observing the activities of the Empire of Blefuscu for some time, I devised a plan to help the Lilliputians. I asked for cables and bars of iron, which I then used to make hooks with attached cables. I swam across the channel to Blefuscu and caught their ships at port. The people were so frightened that they leapt out of their ships and swam to shore. I attached a hook to each ship and tied them together. The Blefuscu soldiers fired arrows at me, but I kept working, protecting my eyes by putting on the spectacles I kept in my coat pocket. I tried to pull the ships away, but they were anchored too tightly, so I had to cut them away with my pocket knife and pull the ships back to Lilliput. Upon my return, I was greeted as a hero in Lilliput. The emperor asked me to go back and retrieve the other ships, with the intention of destroying Blefuscu's military strength and making it a province of his empire. However, I did not want to encourage slavery or injustice, and told the emperor this. My stance caused great disagreement among the government officials, with some of them turning against me and calling for my destruction. 3 weeks later, a delegation from Blefuscu arrived, and the war ended with their surrender. The delegates were privately informed of my kindness towards the Lilliputians and asked me to visit their kingdom. I was eager to visit, and the emperor reluctantly allowed it. As a Nardak, I was no longer required to perform all the duties laid down in my contract, but I still had the opportunity to help the Lilliputians. One day, the emperor's wife's room caught fire, and I quickly came to the rescue. However, I had forgotten my coat and could not put out the fire with my clothing. I thought of a new plan and used my own urine to put out the fire. I was worried that I would be prosecuted for public urination, which is a crime in Lilliput, but the emperor told me I would be pardoned. The emperor's wife, however, could no longer tolerate living in her rescued quarters. Chapter 6. Discovering the customs and practices of Lilliput. I continued to learn more about the fascinating world of Lilliput and its customs and practices. It is quite remarkable that everything in their kingdom, the animals, trees, and plants, are proportioned to their size. They have eyesight that is adapted to their scale as well, meaning I cannot see as clearly close up as they can, while they cannot see as far as I can. Their education system is impressive, with well-educated people. However, their writing system was odd to me. They write not from left to right, like the Europeans, or top to bottom, like the Chinese, but from one corner of the page to the other, like the ladies in England, I jokingly said. Their customs are quite unique as well. For example, when it comes to death, the Lilliputians used to bury their dead with their heads pointing directly downwards. They believed that eventually the dead would rise again, and that the earth, which they thought was flat, would turn upside down. Though, I learned that the better educated Lilliputians no longer believed in this custom. I also learned about some of their laws. For instance, they have a tradition where anyone who falsely accuses someone else of a crime against the state is put to death. Deceit is considered worse than theft in Lilliput, as honest people are more vulnerable to liars than to thieves. Since commerce requires trust among people, the law not only provides punishment, but also rewards good behavior with special titles and privileges. It was also interesting to learn that children are raised not by individual parents, but by the kingdom as a whole. They are sent to live in schools at a very young age, chosen according to the station of their parents, whom they see only twice a year. Only the laborers' children stay home, since their job is to farm. There are no beggars in Lilliput, as the poor are well taken care of. These customs and practices are truly different from anything I have ever encountered, but they seem to work well for the Lilliputians. I am grateful to have the opportunity to learn and experience such a unique culture. Chapter 7. Flight from Lilliput. As I prepared to visit the kingdom of Blefuscu, I was suddenly confronted with a serious situation. A court official informed me that I was being charged with treason by my enemies within the government of Lilliput. I was shown the document that called for my execution, which accused me of several crimes, including public urination, refusal to obey the emperor's orders, to seize the remaining Blefuscu ships, aiding enemy ambassadors, and traveling to Blefuscu. The official told me that Reldresal, a trusted ally, had requested for my sentence to be reduced, but instead of execution, my eyes were to be put out. This punishment had been agreed upon, along with a plan to slowly starve me to death. The operation to blind me was to take place in 3 days, and the thought of it filled me with fear and dread. I knew that I had to act fast to escape the clutches of my enemies and save myself. Without delay, I crossed the channel and arrived in Blefuscu. I was finally free from the dangers that lurked in Lilliput, but I was also filled with sadness at having to leave behind the many friends I had made in that kingdom. Despite the kindness and hospitality that I had been shown in Lilliput, I was forced to leave due to the treacherous actions of a few individuals. In Blefuscu, I found a new home, where I could continue to explore and learn about the many wonders of this world. Though my departure from Lilliput was not the ending I had hoped for, I was determined to make the best of my new circumstances and continue to seek adventure and knowledge. Chapter 8. Setting Sail for Home. 3 days after my conversation with the Emperor Blefuscu, I came across a boat of normal size, overturned in the water. I asked the Emperor to help me fix it, knowing that this would also give me a chance to leave the kingdom before the Lilliputians could carry out their plan to put my eyes out. The Emperor agreed, and within a month, the boat was ready. I set sail and arrived safely back in England, where I made a good profit showing off the miniature farm animals I had brought back with me in my pockets. I was grateful to be back home and free from the strange and dangerous world of Lilliput and Blefuscu.